The Valorian Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for 12,000 years. Their council of elder species had seen empires rise and fall like waves against the shore. The insectoid Krath with their hive minds, the crystalline Vaughn who thought in mathematics, and the aquatic Delphori who could sense lies in the bioelectric fields of other beings. Together, they had built something that seemed eternal. They had never met a threat they could not crush. That changed on a quiet day in the sacred space. Around their ancient homeworld, the human destroyer Starfall tore through the fabric of space with a flash of blue light. It appeared without warning, without permission, in the most protected region of Valorian territory. Alarms screamed across 40 warships. Weapons locked onto the small vessel that had committed the greatest crime in Valorian. Law. Captain Nate Holloway stood on the bridge of his wounded ship and watched the alien vessels surround him. He was a tall man with tired eyes and 3 days of stubble on his face. His uniform was wrinkled. He had not slept in almost a week. How many? He asked. Lieutenant Danny Ortiz looked up from his tactical station. He was young, barely 25, with quick hands and quicker eyes. 43 warships, Captain. All of them bigger than us. Weapons are hot. Commander Elena Cruz stood at Holloway's side. She was his executive officer, a woman with short dark hair and a calm voice that never wavered even in crisis. We should hail them. Explain our situation. Explain what? Danny said. That we ran away from something that ate our colony? They'll think we're insane or lying. Holloway looked at the view screen. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their hulls curved like seashells, covered in patterns that might have been writing or art or something humans could not understand. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the Starfall. They're scanning us, reported Megan Price from the science station. She was the chief science officer, a woman in her 30s with red hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Deep scans. They're looking at everything. Let them look. Holloway said. The Starfall was not a pretty sight. Scorch marks covered the hull from bow to stern. One of the engine nacelles was barely functional, held together with emergency welds and prayers. Of the original crew of 400, only 340 remained. The rest had died at New Haven, buying time for the evacuation. On the Valorian flagship, High Admiral Zendos studied the intruder with all 6 of his eyes. He was Krath, an insectoid being with a carapace of deep purple and mandibles that clicked when he was thinking. He had crushed rebellions across 100 star systems. He had burned worlds that defied the Empire. He had never hesitated to destroy an intruder. A primitive vessel, his tactical officer reported. Chemical propulsion systems. Basic energy weapons. Crude, but functional. And yet, it penetrated our space without detection, Zendos observed. How? No one had an answer. The Vaughn ambassador, a crystalline being that refracted light into rainbows, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Their jump technology is different from ours. Unstable. Dangerous. They tear holes in space rather than folding it. Barbaric, the Delphori representative said. She floated in a tank of water, her fish-like body elegant and ancient. But effective, it seems. Zenos clicked his mandibles. Open a channel. I will speak to them. On the Starfall, the communication officer announced the incoming transmission. Captain Holloway straightened his uniform and nodded. Put it through. The view screen flickered, and then they saw him. High Admiral Zemnos, in all his alien glory. His voice came through the translator as cold and precise. Unidentified vessel. You have violated Valorian's sacred space. This crime is punishable by death. You will surrender your ship and submit to judgment. Elena Cruz leaned close to Holloway. We can't fight them. We can barely fly. I know, Holloway said quietly. Then he stepped forward and spoke clearly. High Admiral, My name is Captain Nate Holloway of the human vessel Starfall. We did not come here by choice. We are refugees, fleeing destruction. We mean no disrespect to your territory." Xenos tilted his head, a gesture that meant nothing to humans but indicated curiosity among the craft. Refugees? From what? Holloway paused. How could he explain something he did not understand himself? Something attacked our colony. Something we have no name for. It destroyed everything in a matter of hours. We are all that escaped. You expect me to believe that a species capable of interstellar travel was defeated so easily? I expect nothing, Holloway said. I'm telling you the truth. You can believe it or not. But I'm asking you, one commander to another, for mercy. My crew has been through hell. We have wounded who need medical attention. We have families who lost everything. Silence stretched across the void between the ships. Danny Ortiz watched his tactical display. They're charging weapons, Captain. Holloway did not flinch. He looked directly at the image of High Admiral Xenos and made a decision that would change galactic history. He spoke slowly, making sure every word was clear. We are not your enemy, but if you fire on us, you will learn why humanity should never be cornered. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the exhausted certainty of a man who had nothing left to lose. Xenos studied the human. He had seen many species beg for mercy. He had seen them threaten and bluster and weep. But he had never seen this. This strange calm. This quiet promise of consequences. Hold fire, Xenos ordered. His tactical officer turned in surprise. High Admiral? I said hold fire. Xenos leaned forward, all 6 eyes fixed on the view screen. I want to know more about these humans. And I want to know what they are running from. On the Starfall, Elena Cruz let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Danny Ortiz's hands were shaking over his console. Megan Price was already analyzing the alien scans of their ship. Captain Holloway stood motionless, his eyes locked with the alien admiral across the vast distance of space. The standoff had begun. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, something ancient and hungry was still following. 18 hours passed in tense silence. The Valorian warships held their positions around the Starfall like wolves circling wounded prey. No one fired. No one moved. But no one relaxed either. On the Valorian flagship, technicians worked through the night analyzing every scan of the human vessel. What they found made them nervous in ways they could not explain. The reactor output is wrong, the chief engineer reported to High Admiral Xenos. A ship that size should produce perhaps 1/10 of what we are detecting. Their power systems are crude, inefficient, and somehow more powerful than our own cruisers. Their weapons? Xenos asked. Primitive. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to near light speed. Thermonuclear warheads. The engineer paused. And something else. Something our computers cannot identify. It appears to be a directed energy weapon of some kind, but the principles are unknown to us. The Von ambassadors studied the data with interest. Light shifted through their crystalline body. Fascinating. They brute forced their way through problems. No elegance. No efficiency. Just raw power applied until something breaks. Dangerous, the Delphori representative said from her tank. A species that thinks this way would be unpredictable in conflict. Xenos clicked his mandibles slowly. He had commanded fleets for 300 years. He knew when he was facing something new. What of their biology? Carbon-based. Oxygen-breathing. Average lifespan approximately 80 years. The scientist seemed almost embarrassed. They are remarkably fragile, High Admiral. Soft bodies. No natural armor or weapons. They should not have survived their own evolutionary process. And yet, here they are, Zendo said quietly. In our space. Having escaped something that terrified them. On the Starfall, the crew was reaching the limits of exhaustion. Captain Holloway had ordered rotating rest shifts, but few could actually sleep. The alien ships outside their windows were a constant reminder of how precarious their situation was. Kira, Vance found Holloway in his ready room, staring at old photographs on his desk. She was a diplomatic attach, a woman in her 40s with silver streaking her brown hair. She had been on New Haven for a trade negotiation when everything fell apart. Captain, I have a suggestion, she said. Holloway looked up. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. I'm listening. Let me go to them. Alone and unarmed. Let me speak to their council directly. That's suicide. Maybe. Kira sat down across from him. But we're not getting anywhere with this standoff. They don't trust us. They have no reason to trust us. But if I go over there, if I show them we're willing to be vulnerable, it might change the calculation. Holloway shook his head. They could kill you the moment you step off the shuttle. They could kill all of us right now if they wanted to, Kira pointed out. They haven't. That means they're curious. That means there's an opening. Elena Cruz entered the ready room and heard the last part of the conversation. She looked between Holloway and Kira with concern. You're not seriously considering this. I'm considering everything, Holloway said. We don't have many options. The debate lasted another hour. Danny Ortiz argued against it. Megan Price thought it might work. Tony Reyes, the chief engineer, pointed out that their ship could not run even if they wanted to. The engines would need at least 3 days of repairs before another jump was possible. In the end, Holloway made the call. Do it, he said to Kira. But you come back. That's an order. Kira smiled tiredly. I'll do my best, Captain. She boarded a small shuttle and flew across the void toward the Valorian flagship. The alien ship swallowed her tiny vessel like a whale swallowing a minnow. Armed guards met her at the airlock. They were craft soldiers, their carapaces gleaming with ceremonial paint, their weapons pointed at her chest. Kira raised her empty hands. I come in peace. I request an audience with your council. They did not answer. They simply marched her through corridors of strange beauty, past windows that looked out on stars she did not recognize, until she stood in a vast chamber before the assembled leaders of the Valorian Empire. High Admiral Zendo sat at the center. The Vaughn ambassador glittered on his right. The Delphori representative floated in her tank on his left. Dozens of other officials and advisors filled the room. Kira Vance stood alone before them and did not flinch. You are either brave or foolish, Zendo said. Perhaps both. I'm neither, Kira replied. I'm desperate. And I think you should be too. She told them everything. She told them about New Haven, a colony of 200,000 people. She told them how the darkness came without warning, how ships vanished, how the planet itself seemed to be consumed. She told them about the evacuation, the chaos, the families separated and lost, and she told them about the thing that was hunting them. We don't know what it is, Kira admitted. We don't know where it came from. We only know that it destroys everything it touches. Not conquers. Not occupies. Destroys. It takes worlds apart piece by piece and leaves nothing behind. The Krath representative, an elder who had not spoken before, made a sound of dismissal. A convenient story. You trespass in our space and invent a monster to justify your crime. I wish I was lying, Kira said. I truly do. The Delphori ambassador closed her large eyes and concentrated. Her species could sense deception in the bioelectric fields of other beings. After a long moment, she opened her eyes and spoke. She believes what she is saying. There is no lie in her. Silence fell over the chamber. High Admiral Zendos leaned forward. His 6 eyes studied Kira with new intensity. "What is hunting you, human?" Kira met his gaze without looking away. "We don't know. We only know it cannot be stopped. Only delayed." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For the first time in 12,000 years, the rulers of the Valorian Empire felt something they had almost forgotten existed: fear. High Admiral Zendos made a decision that his council called foolish. He sent a reconnaissance fleet to the coordinates Kira Vance had provided. 12 ships fully armed, crewed by veterans. Their mission was simple: go to where New Haven used to be. See what happened. Report back. The council argued against it. The Krath elders called it a waste of resources. The Vaughn calculated that the probability of finding anything useful was less than 12%. But Zendos was not interested in probability. He needed to know if the human woman was telling the truth. The fleet departed at dawn, as measured by the ancient clocks of the Valorian homeworld. They would reach the target coordinates in approximately 14 hours. On the Starfall, Captain Holloway received word of the reconnaissance mission. He called his senior officers to the briefing room. Kira Vance joined them by video link from the Valorian flagship, where she remained as a guest. Or perhaps a hostage. The distinction was not clear. "This is good," Elena Cruz said. "They're taking us seriously." "This is dangerous," Holloway corrected. "If they find what I think they'll find, they might decide we brought this thing to them. They might decide the safest option is to destroy us and hope it goes away." Danny Ortiz shook his head. "It won't go away. We tried that. New Haven tried that. It doesn't work. I know that. You know that. They don't." Tony Reyes, the chief engineer, rubbed his tired face. He was a stocky man with grease-stained hands and dark circles under his eyes. He had been working non-stop to repair the engines. "Captain, I need another 2 days minimum. Even then, we'll only be able to make 1 jump, maybe 2. After that, the reactor will need a complete overhaul." "Understood." Holloway turned to Megan Price. "What can you tell us about the entity?" "Anything new?" Megan pulled up data on the briefing room display. Charts and graphs and sensor readings filled the screen. "I've been analyzing everything we recorded during the attack on New Haven. The entity doesn't behave like any organism or machine we've encountered. It exists partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. It can manipulate matter at a fundamental level, and it seems to be drawn to energy signatures." "What kind of energy signatures?" Kira asked through the video link. "Advanced technology. Fusion reactors. Antimatter drives. The more sophisticated the energy source, the more attractive it seems to be." Megan paused. "The Valorian Empire has been operating advanced technology for 12,000 years. If I'm right about how this thing hunts, they're basically a beacon." Silence fell over the briefing room. "So we didn't lead it here," Elena said slowly. "It was always going to find them eventually." "That's my theory," Megan confirmed. "We just accelerated the timeline." The reconnaissance fleet reached the coordinates 14 hours later, exactly on schedule. What they found was nothing. Not ruins. Not debris. Not radioactive craters or broken ships, or any sign that a colony of 200,000 people had ever existed. Nothing. The star was still there, but it was wrong. Its light had dimmed. Its energy output had dropped by nearly 40%. Something was draining it. Something that the Valorian sensors could not detect. Fleet Commander Torvax ordered a full scan of the system. His ships spread out in a standard search pattern. For 3 hours, they found nothing but empty space and that dying star. Then the shadows began to move. It came from everywhere and nowhere. A presence that pressed against the hulls of the ships. A whisper that crawled through the communication channels. Crew members began to scream. They clawed at their eyes. They spoke in languages that had never been invented. They saw things that could not be described. Fleet Commander Torvax tried to order a retreat. His voice came out as static. His hands would not obey his commands. He could feel something inside his mind, something vast and cold and utterly alien. Only one ship escaped. On the Valorian flagship, they watched the survivor limp back into formation. Its hull was undamaged, but its crew was broken. 300 Valorians sat at their stations, alive but empty. Their eyes were open, but saw nothing. Their hearts beat, but their minds were gone. Lieutenant Commander Tony Reyes stood beside Captain Holloway on the Starfall's bridge as they monitored the Valorian communications. He heard the reports. He saw the medical scans. It touched them, he said quietly. Whatever it is, it reached into their heads and took something. Holloway nodded grimly. Now they know. Now they believe. The Valorian Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in millennia, the chamber was filled with fear. The Krath elders argued about what to do. The Vaughn ran calculations that always came back with the same answer. Insufficient data. Probability of survival unknown. The Delphori representative floated in her tank and said nothing. She had touched the minds of the survivors. She had felt what they had experienced. She would not speak of it for days. High Admiral Zendos dismissed his council and went to the human ship. He walked alone, without guards, through the airlock of the Starfall. Captain Holloway met him in the corridor. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Two commanders from different worlds, different species, different histories. I owe you an apology, Zendos said at last. I did not believe your ambassador. I didn't expect you to, Holloway replied. I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't seen it myself. How did you survive? Holloway considered the question carefully. We didn't fight it. We didn't try to understand it. We just ran. We ran as fast and as far as we could. And even then, we barely made it. Zendos clicked his mandibles slowly. My people have ruled this sector for 12,000 years. We have never run from anything. Then you've been lucky, Holloway said. Or you've never faced anything worth running from. The alien admiral fell silent. In that silence, Holloway saw something he had not expected. Humility. Double quotes. What do you propose, Captain? Zendos asked. Holloway thought of his crew. He thought of the families they had lost. He thought of the darkness that was still out there, still hunting, still hungry. I propose we work together, he said. Not because we're friends, not because we trust each other, but because neither of us can survive this alone. Zendos considered this for a long moment. Then he extended one of his limbs in a gesture that Holloway did not recognize but somehow understood. Agreement. The alliance had begun. News of the reconnaissance fleet spread through the Valorian Empire like fire through dry grass. 12 ships had gone out. 1 had returned. 300 crew members were alive, but their minds were gone. The enemy could not be seen, could not be fought, could not be understood. Panic followed. 3 member species announced their withdrawal from the Empire. They would flee to the far edges of the galaxy and hope the darkness did not follow. The Krath elders demanded action. Some wanted to attack the humans, believing they had brought this curse upon the Empire. Others wanted to surrender, though no one knew how to surrender to something that did not negotiate. The Vaughn retreated into their calculations, searching for patterns that might explain the entity. They found nothing. Their mathematics, which had solved every problem for 10,000 years, gave them no answers. Captain Holloway requested permission to address the full Valorian Council. High Admiral Zendos granted it, though many on the council objected. They did not want to listen to a human. They did not want to admit that they needed help. Holloway walked into the council chamber with Ambassador Kira Vance at his side. She would translate his words into the formal language of Valorian diplomacy. He would speak the truth. The chamber was larger than any room Holloway had ever seen. It curved upward like the inside of a shell, covered in murals that told the history of the Empire. Thousands of years of conquest and glory, painted in colors that human eyes could barely perceive. He stood at the center of that chamber and looked at the assembled leaders of civilization that had ruled the stars since before humanity invented writing. "You're afraid?" he said simply. "I understand. We were afraid too. We still are." The Krath representative made a sound of anger. "We are not afraid. The Valorian Empire fears nothing." "Then you're fools," Holloway replied. Kira translated his words exactly as he spoke them, though her voice wavered slightly. "That thing out there destroyed our colony in hours. It took your fleet apart without showing itself. If you're not afraid, you're not paying attention." Murmurs ran through the chamber. No one spoke to the council this way. No one dared. Holloway continued. "You can't run. Believe me, we tried. You can't hide. It found us across hundreds of light years. And you can't fight. Not alone. Not with the weapons you have. Not with the tactics, you know. Then what do you suggest?" the Devori representative asked. Her voice was soft, still haunted by what she had sensed in the survivors' minds. "I suggest you learn," Holloway said. "Humanity has spent its entire existence fighting things stronger than ourselves. Predators that were faster, stronger, deadlier. Diseases we couldn't see. Natural disasters we couldn't prevent. We survived because we adapted. Because we refused to accept that the fight was over." He paused and looked around the chamber. "You've been the biggest thing in this galaxy for a long time. You've forgotten what it's like to be small, to be weak, to face something that could destroy you without effort." "And you would teach us?" Xenos asked. "Yes." Holloway met the High Admiral's gaze. "Not because we're better than you. Not because we're smarter or stronger. But because we've had practice losing and surviving anyway." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to reject the human offer out of pride. Others saw no alternative. The Vaughn calculated probabilities. The Delphori sensed the sincerity in the human captain's words. In the end, the vote was close. But it passed. The alliance was official. Work began immediately. Lieutenant Danny Ortiz spent 18 hours a day with Valorian weapons engineers, explaining human kinetic weapons. The concept was simple. Take a piece of metal, accelerate it to near light speed, hit the enemy with it. No energy shields could stop raw mass moving that fast. The Valorians found the idea crude, but they could not argue with the physics. Commander Elena Cruz trained Valorian officers in asymmetric warfare. She showed them how to fight when outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. She taught them to think like prey, to use terrain and deception and misdirection. "Your tactics assume you will win through superior force," she explained to a room of confused Valorian commanders. "That works when you're the strongest. When you're not, you have to be clever. You have to make the enemy fight on your terms, not theirs." Tony Rees worked with Valorian engineers on the most important project of all. They needed to hide the fleet. The entity is drawn to energy signatures, Megan Price had explained. If we can mask those signatures, we might be able to avoid detection, or at least confuse it. It was difficult work. Valorian ships were designed to project power, to announce their presence. Everything about them generated massive energy readings. Hiding them was like trying to hide a bonfire by putting a blanket over it. But Tony Reyes was stubborn. He came up with a system of energy dampeners and signal scramblers that reduced the fleet's signature by 80%. It was not perfect. It would not fool the entity forever. but it might buy them time. High Admiral Zendos observed these preparations with a mixture of fascination and humiliation. His people had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Now they were learning from a species that had achieved interstellar travel barely 2 centuries ago. He found Captain Holloway one evening, standing alone on an observation deck, watching the stars. "Your people are remarkable," Zendos admitted. "I did not expect this." Holloway shrugged. "We're not remarkable. We're just used to being in over our heads. That is not a quality my people possess. We have always been dominant. We have always won." Zendos clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "I find this situation humiliating." "I know," Holloway said. "But humiliation is better than extinction." The alien admiral was silent for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are a strange species, Captain. You take comfort in uncomfortable truths." "It's how we survive," Holloway replied. "We look at the worst possibilities and we plan for them. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's gotten us this far." Zendos considered this philosophy. It was so different from the Valorian way, which emphasized confidence and certainty. Perhaps, he thought, there was wisdom in expecting failure. Across the fleet, humans and Valorians worked side by side. They did not understand each other. They did not particularly like each other. But they shared a common enemy, and that was enough. In the darkness between the stars, the entity continued its slow approach. It had tasted the minds of 300 Valorians. It had felt their fear, their confusion, their despair. It was hungry for more. But for the first time, something waited for it. Something that had learned from loss. Something that refused to surrender. The battle was coming. And humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to fight. The entity arrived on the 12th day. It did not come like a fleet or an army. It came like a storm, like a disease, like a nightmare that refused to end. The stars themselves seemed to dim as it approached. Communications across the fleet dissolved into static and whispers. Captain Holloway stood on the bridge of the Starfall and watched the darkness spread across his view screen. It was not black, not exactly. It was an absence, a place where light went and did not return. Looking at it made his eyes ache and his mind feel wrong. "All ships report ready," Elena Cruz announced. Her voice was steady, but Holloway could see the tension in her shoulders. "The Valorians are holding formation." "Good." Holloway activated the fleet-wide channel. His voice would reach every ship, human and Valorian alike. "This is Captain Holloway. The enemy is here. Remember your training. Remember why we're fighting. And remember this. We don't have to win. We just have to survive." High Admiral Zendos listened to the human's words from his flagship. 12,000 years of Valorian military doctrine told him that survival was not victory. But watching his reconnaissance fleet return empty-eyed and broken had changed something inside him. Perhaps survival was enough. The first wave hit without warning. It was not weapons fire. It was pressure. A weight that pushed against the hulls of the ships and squeezed at the minds of their crews. Valorian soldiers screamed. Some collapsed at their stations. Others began to babble in languages they had never learned. But the humans held. Danny Ortiz felt the pressure in his skull like a migraine multiplied by infinity. His vision blurred. His hands shook. But he had trained for this. He had practiced ignoring pain and fear and distraction. He focused on his console and did his job. "Target acquired," he said through gritted teeth. "Firing solution locked." The Starfall's main gun spoke. A tungsten slug the size of a small car accelerated to 90% of light speed. It tore through the darkness and disappeared into the entity. Nothing happened. "No effect," Danny reported. It's like shooting at fog. Holloway had expected this. You could not fight the entity directly. That was the first lesson they had learned at New Haven. But you could distract it. You could confuse it. You could make it work for its meal. All ships, execute Pattern Alpha. Start the noise. Across the fleet, ships began to generate sensor ghosts. False energy signatures bloomed in 100 locations. Decoy drones launched, each one projecting the electromagnetic profile of a full-sized warship. The space around the entity filled with targets. It hesitated. For the first time, the darkness stopped its advance. It seemed to flow in multiple directions at once, reaching for the false signals, trying to identify the real threats among the deceptions. Megan Price watched from her station, recording everything. "It's working," she said. "The entity is having trouble distinguishing real ships from the decoys." "It won't last forever," Holloway said. "Keep moving. Don't let it lock onto us." The Starfall dove and rolled through the chaos, leading a squadron of Valorian cruisers through a maze of debris and decoys. The entity pursued, but slowly, constantly distracted by false targets. Tony Reyes worked miracles in the engine room. He pushed the damaged reactor beyond every safety limit. Warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed. He ignored them all. "Come on, girl," he whispered to his ship. "Just a little more. You can do this." Hours passed. The battle stretched on without pause. Ships were lost. The Valorian cruiser Brave Wind vanished into the darkness with all hands. The destroyer Storm's Edge broke apart when its reactor failed. 23 Valorian vessels fell silent, their crews taken or killed. The humans fared better, but not by much. The destroyer Midnight Sun suffered a hull breach that killed 40 crew members. The frigate Hope's Light lost its entire bridge crew to a psychic attack. On the Starfall, Lieutenant Danny Ortiz made a discovery that would change everything. "Captain," he shouted, "I'm reading fluctuations in the entity. It's reacting to our reactor output." Megan Price checked her own sensors. "He's right. Every time we pass close to the entity, it recoils slightly. Something about our energy signature is causing a reaction." Holloway did not understand. What kind of reaction? Megan ran calculations furiously. "It's the frequency. Human reactors operate at a different frequency than Valorian ones. Less efficient, more chaotic. The entity doesn't like it. It's like a bad smell to a predator. Can we weaponize that?" "I think so. If we route all our reactor outputs through the main deflector array, we can create a pulse that should push the entity back. But it will drain all our power. We'll be dead in space afterward." Holloway made the decision instantly. "Do it. Danny, coordinate with the fleet. Tell them to clear a path." Danny Ortiz began relaying orders. But as he worked, something happened. The entity seemed to focus on the Starfall specifically. The pressure on his mind increased tenfold. He could feel it reaching for him, trying to get inside his thoughts. He kept working. Megan Price finished her calculations and fed them to Tony Reyes in the engine room. Tony rerouted power with hands that shook from exhaustion. Circuits overloaded. Conduits melted. But he held it together. "Ready," he reported. "On your command, Captain." Holloway looked at his crew. Elena Cruz, calm and steady. Danny Ortiz, fighting against the pain in his head. Megan Price, brilliant and determined. Tony Reyes, stubborn to the last. These were his people. This was his ship. Fire. The Starfall screamed. Every watt of power in the ship poured through the deflector array in a single massive pulse. A wave of chaotic energy exploded outward, washing over the entity like fire. The darkness screamed back. It was a sound that existed in the mind rather than the air. A howl of frustration and surprise, and something that might have been pain. The entity contracted, pulling away from the fleet, retreating from the noise and the chaos and the stubborn resistance it had not expected. Danny Ortiz collapsed at his station. The effort of maintaining focus through the psychic assault had finally overwhelmed him. He died with his hand still on his console, his last act sending final targeting data to the Valorian fleet. The entity withdrew, not destroyed, not defeated, but discouraged. It had expected easy prey, civilizations that would fold under its presence. It had found something different, something that fought back, something that made the harvest too costly. It turned and moved away, seeking easier targets among the distant stars. Silence fell over the fleet. Captain Holloway stared at the empty view screen. The darkness was gone. The stars were visible again. They had survived. Elena Cruz checked her displays with trembling hands. The entity has left the system. Long-range sensors show it moving away at high speed. Casualties? Holloway asked quietly. 23 Valorian ships lost. Estimated 7,000 dead. She paused. On the Starfall, 40 crew members lost, including Lieutenant Ortiz. Holloway closed his eyes. Danny Ortiz had been 25 years old. He had joined the Navy to see the stars. He had died saving species he had never met. High Admiral Zendos hailed the Starfall from his flagship. His image appeared on the view screen. He looked older somehow, changed by what he had witnessed. "It is retreating," he said. "Your strategy worked." "It'll be back," Holloway replied. "It knows we're here now. It knows what we can do. Next time, it will be prepared. Then we must be more prepared." Zendos paused. "My people owe you a debt, Captain. We thought you were primitives, intruders. We were wrong." Holloway looked at the alien admiral. 2 weeks ago, they had been enemies. Now they were something else. Not friends exactly, but allies, survivors. "You weren't wrong," Holloway said. "We are primitive. Our ships are crude. Our technology is basic. But we've had a lot of practice being the underdog. It's the only thing we're really good at." Zendos made the sound that Holloway now recognized as craft laughter. "Your species is remarkable, Captain. You look at the darkness and refuse to despair. You face impossible odds and find reasons to fight. I do not understand how you do this." Holloway thought about the question. He thought about Earth, about all the wars and plagues and disasters that humanity had survived. He thought about the stubborn refusal to give up that seemed to be written into human DNA. "I don't know either," he admitted. "Maybe we're just too stubborn to know when we're beaten." The Valorian Empire began its transformation that day. They studied human tactics and human technology. They learned to fight like prey instead of predators. They built alliances with species they had once conquered. And they waited, somewhere in the darkness between the stars. The entity still lurked. It was patient. It was ancient. It would return. But when it did, something would be waiting for it. Something that had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't have to be the strongest to survive. You just have to refuse to die. Captain Nate Holloway stood on the bridge of his battered ship and looked out at the stars. Behind him, his crew worked to repair the damage. Ahead of him, the future stretched out like an unwritten story. They had won one battle. Many more would come. But for the first time since New Haven, Holloway felt something that surprised him. Hope.